Before there was the Brewers-Cubs rivalry, there was the Brewers-White Sox rivalry. We're going to get into that next. Todd Welter, Locked on White Sox. Chuck Freimund, Locked on Brewers.
You are Locked on White Sox, your daily Chicago White Sox podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
White Sox 7-21. The Brewers a game under the 500 mark. They meet in the first of three coming up. And I call it Comiskey Park. I always will call it Comiskey Park. Chuck Freimund, Locked on Brewers. Todd Welter from Locked on White Sox joining us right now, and looking forward to this series as the Brewers go into Chicago. Like I said, I still call it the old Comiskey.
Yeah, you can call it Sox Park. I mean, I still call it Sox Park. Rate Field is better than Guaranteed Rate Field. I'll take that. Of all the corporate sponsorships, I didn't mind U.S. Cellular Field because you could call it the Cell. And, Milwaukee, they had U.S. Cellular Arena. You call it the Cell. That's fine. But, I mean, Comiskey Park, the new Comiskey Park, it never felt like the new Comiskey Park because the old Comiskey Park is now a parking lot. And you remember that, Chuck. I mean, that place was a true ballpark. That was just an old stinky beauty of a mess, just like County Stadium.
I was in 83. I went down to cover the ALCS between the Orioles and White Sox. That's back when it was a best of 5, and the Orioles won it in 4 that year.
Yep.
So I'm looking forward to this. I'm looking forward to doing the show, and I'm trying to get down there to cover one of these games. Last time I was at the new Comiskey was the 93 playoffs when the Sox took on Toronto. That's when Molitor played with the Jays. You guys, the White Sox 7-21, as I mentioned, won on opening day, and I thought, wow, okay. And I'm still looking at several of these games. You guys are in some of these games that you're playing. In fact, a lot of these games I'm looking at, I always see on the scoreboard, White Sox got the early lead, but then at the final score, it's like 4-2 Twins.
Yeah, so it's still a little bit like 2024 in that, they are finding ways to lose, but a lot of it's just more, they just don't have a closer, for example. They started the year, they thought Mike Clevenger could close, and that was just, he thought he could. Obviously, manager Will Venable couldn't. He's more of a forward-thinking guy. The problem is they just can't get a guy to get those final 3 outs, and that's what happened against the Athletics yesterday. They take the 2-1 lead in the 10th. Jordan Leisure gets the first out, just can't get the second out, leaves a ball right up over the middle to Luis Urias, too, who blasts a 2-run shot. There's a name from the past for Brewers fans there. So that's just been their problem. They're either winning games by a lot or they're losing very close games because they just don't have either the ability to hit with runners in scoring position, and right now their bullpen just cannot keep the lead tied or close enough.
By the way, this episode brought to you by Amazon Fire TV Stick 4K. Turn any TV into your Xbox. No counsel is needed. Head to Amazon.com. Fire TV Locked On to learn more. Looking very much forward to this series. Like I said, these two very familiar to each other from the old days. We'll get to that a little bit, but I like that in baseball now we're playing everybody. Every team is on the schedule.
Yeah, I'm actually a big fan of playing everybody. I was never a fan of how you had to play your division 19 times. 13 times I think is just enough. I prefer, I actually would like it if it's like, 2 series in terms of like 2 game series, one at the one market and the other in the other market. But I have no problem alternating how it is. I like that you're able to at least make sure a lot of these stars can come through your markets more than, very rare. Like, for example, even if living in Milwaukee, if you want to see Shohei Ohtani twice now, you could, or even now 3 times, you could drive down every other year now, see him at Rate Field, see him at Wrigley Field, and see him at AmFam Field. So that's why I'm a big fan too of, especially if you're in that Chicago, Milwaukee area, even if you want to make a trip up to Minnesota, you can start seeing these stars more often, and also maybe good competitive matchups too.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm looking at the White Sox, and I don't see a lot of offense right now. The closer job seems to be a mess. The starting pitching. Let's talk about what's going right with the White Sox this year, despite the 7-21 record. What are some of the things that you've liked and see that at least they're showing some improvement on?
Yeah, they're playing much better, more cleaner baseball. The oh my gosh, the White Sox moments are not happening as much. Obviously, you're still gonna have your errors. You're still gonna have your base running gaffes. Andrew Vaughn had a terrible base running gaffe yesterday that cost them the chance to have the lead, but it's getting few and far between. Will Venable has almost been as good as advertised as a lot of people thought. I mean, he had this amazing strategy that I thought was creative because obviously it works. I mean, you look good when it works, but he had Tyler Gilbert open both games on Friday and Saturday, and then he had Brian Isert open yesterday because one of the reasons he didn't want to have his starting pitching have to go through the Oakland A's lineup more than 3 times, and because the A's destroyed them at right field. So you're starting to see that. Or for example, he laid down a bunt with the bases loaded down 2 runs to set up moving over, gets the run in. Then he sets up and completely gets the double play out. And guess what? Edgar Caro drives in a run. So he's starting to press these buttons that make sense and works a lot that would remind you of a Pat Murphy or a Craig Counsell. So I think that's been going well. And, the starting pitching, it hasn't been great, but it's had its moments. Again, with those openers, Burke, Cannon, and Martin both had great outings. And the biggest thing is, the biggest surprise and the best thing about the season, sorry, Brewers fans, Shane Smith, the Rule 5 pick that the White Sox got from the Brewers. He has been a stud. He's a dude. So if the Brewers are saying he wasn't good enough for a 40-man roster spot, the Brewers better have way better pitchers than this guy because he's giving off Garrett Crochet vibes.
Would have kept him over Connor Thomas, who's given him absolutely nothing. The Brewers got the Rule 5 pick from the Cardinals. With us, game under 500. It's been a disappointing road trip so far. 2-5 so far, Todd, on this road trip. And going into Chicago, I think people are looking at this, and I don't like looking at it this way. Well, this is the time we can finish up at 500 and sweep the White. Like they're just going to go in there and sweep the White Sox. I don't look at baseball that way.
Yeah, I mean, this is definitely not the other thing. If you're asking what's been right, the White Sox have avoided being that official get right team that they were last year, and especially the White Sox went up to AmFam last year and fought the Brewers for 3 games. I mean, they basically gave them everything they could handle. So that's one thing too that no Brewers fan can look at this and be like, this is 3 games of get right. Because especially the White Sox have gotten most of their 7 wins, they've gotten 5 of them at home. Especially if they can get the long ball going, then the White Sox definitely have a chance to win games because in every game they've won, they've hit a home run. So that's the other thing. The Brewers have got to keep, the White Sox, if they want to win, from keeping the ball getting out of the ballpark. But they definitely are playing much more cleaner, and they're fighting teams. They went to Fenway, and they only got blown out. It's a moral victory, but they only got blown out once by Boston. They even took 2 of 3 from Boston when their announcers were crowing, saying, oh, man, this is a get-right, series for them. And the White Sox took 2 of 3 and almost swept them.
Yeah, I feel like every time any of our sports teams feels like they're going to get right, it's like it's a rude awakening. Yeah, I remember watching that Red Sox series as well. No doubt about it. Chuck Freimund and Todd Welter here. Crossover. Locked on Brewers, locked on White Sox. Yeah, the White Sox to me, Luis Robert. He's a guy, I feel like he's always on the trading block at the deadline. Seems like the numbers are down for him this year.
Yeah, part of that is he's just not a April guy. I mean, there's something, with some international players, they just don't play well in the cold once it starts to warm up. And again, he hit a home run and had a big hit on Sunday against the A's. So that's why I'm not totally worried. Last year, the issue was his injuries, and that's been his entire story of his career is, can he stay healthy? In 2023, he stayed healthy for an entire season, made the All-Star team, probably would have won the MVP had the White Sox not lost 100 games and Shohei Ohtani not have been in the AL. But right now, it's just one of those things where he's trying to figure out how to be more patient at the plate and not chase pitches. And sometimes it's working. And sometimes what it's doing is teams are then taking advantage of him, then not swinging as much down and away, which is a good thing. But if they're throwing them for strikes, he's laying off of them and then he's striking out looking. So that's been an issue. He's just trying to I think he's trying to piece everything together, that what they're asking him to do is be more patient at the plate, look for his pitch to try to launch it, and otherwise get on base and keep the line moving.
What is this year all about for the White Sox? We know what happened last year. You just want to see progress, right? So what's the game plan? What is the the blueprint that they want towards success.
Yeah, the whole exercise of the 2025 season is basically getting as many of their prospects that are as close to the big league level of their core to the major leagues and getting them some runway at some point this season. They've just started to do that with Edgar Carroll, their catcher, and he's been hitting pretty well. He still now has to drive the ball, obviously, out of the park. He's been mostly hitting for average right now. Chase Mydroth was another one that they just called up. He went on the 10-day IL, though, with a thumb injury. Hopefully he's back soon. Brooks Baldwin is showing that he could basically be a super sub. Maybe his ceiling is Ben Zobrist. Otherwise, his floor would be maybe a Bill Hall or a Larry Garcia for the White Sox fans on listening. Bill Hall for the Brewers fans. That type of stuff. And then obviously Shane Smith's development, Sean Burke's development. Those are big keys. Otherwise, eventually Kyle Teal, one of their top prospects, is going to be up. Hopefully Colson Montgomery gets up. And really, that's the whole point of the exercise. And then the other point that I've said is, can you start to show some signs of how they're going to play baseball on the next competitive team under Will Venable? And I think they're starting to show that. Again, playing clean baseball, trying to hit the long ball that fits well to the ballpark. Otherwise, if you can't get it out of the park, do the little things necessary, taking first to third, second to home, that type of stuff. Doing all those little extra things that they need to do to win games. That's basically the whole point of the exercise of the season. Because as I've said, wins and losses don't matter. If they win 36 games, who cares? The whole point is you can still lose 30. You can still win 36 games with the arrow pointed up, so long as a lot of your future is looking bright. And that's the biggest point of the season.
All right, we continue on here on our crossover. Locked on Brewers, Locked on White Sox. We'll look at Game 1 starters. We'll talk about the good and the bad with both teams. That's coming up next here on Locked on Crossover. Brought to you by Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios, I tell you about this. I go out and it's a good source of protein with the Wonderful Pistachios I put into my yogurt after I'm done getting a little midday workout and then come back here to do the rest of my work and prepare for the game at night. Wonderful Pistachios, the highest protein nuts out there. Each 1 ounce serving, 6 grams of protein, over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber, better for you unsaturated fats to keep you feeling fuller longer. You want something that's going to stay in your stomach and you're not going to be running to the cooler or the refrigerator or whatever and eat all day. Well, you'll love the no shells variety as well. The no shells Wonderful Pistachios for that grab and go ease. All these Little Green Wonders pack a protein punch. I told you, I put those in my the yogurt after I get a little workout in, and it provides you with the protein because we want to stay healthy. You want the protein when you're working out and all that. Whatever you're doing in life, you want the protein. And again, 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you 10% of the value. Get snackin, get crackin, the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. Wonderfulpistachios.com. The fact that Wonderful Pistachios are complete protein provides 9 essential amino acids, and it's all good for you with Wonderful Pistachios. Visit them online, wonderfulpistachios.com. Chuck Freimund and Todd Welter here on Locked on Brewers. Todd, get him on X or Twitter at Todd J Dub. Me on Twitter, Chuck Freimund, Freimund. Get to the pitching matchups. Got Freddie Peralta, who's pitched well, really well in most of his outings this year, all of his outings, I want to say. I'm looking at Bryce Wilson. Now, when the Brewers lost Wilson and he signed with the White Sox, the Brewers, I think, kind of looked at that. They got as much as they could out of Wilson. And he was really good in spot starts, coming out of the bullpen for 2 years with the Brewers. And I see things have not been going well so far with Bryce Wilson, the Game 1 starter for the Sox.
Yeah, he's in the same role that he is with the Brewers. They signed him. They gave him. The thought was maybe they might give him a shot at the starting rotation. And from clear on spring training, it wasn't going to be in the starting rotation. He'd be more in the swing spot, long relief. And he did all right to start the season. His ERA and his WHIP obviously are up, but he's now in the swing role after Martin Perez was lost for the year. So they're going to ask him to obviously now be a starter. They're going to try to stretch him out. The hope is, can he get to 4 innings right now as he builds up his arm strength? That's kind of going to be what's been expected. But I'm with you. I really thought that his best role is out of the bullpen. I'm not really thrilled that he is going to be a starter. I was more, hey, get this guy in the bullpen. Maybe he can keep his ERA down and then flip him at the deadline. That's kind of the point with him for this season. But now he's going to be asked to eat as many innings as he can until the deadline, and hopefully they can flip him for something that can be valuable in the future.
Freddie is going to start for Milwaukee. Todd, you know about Freddie. Freddie is a guy who's I think is not a true ace, but on this team he is. Although you could argue Quintana is pushing him for that job. They're both good. And Freddie has pitched well in all his starts, went 5 innings last outing, didn't give him enough offensive support. So we'll see what happens coming up in this outing in Chicago. But you were telling me you got to keep the ball in the ballpark against the White Sox.
Yeah, they've actually been hitting some home runs in their wins. I mean, that's the key. If they're hitting some home runs, they will win. Again, on Saturday, they hit a home run with Luis Robert Jr. They won. On Thursday, I don't care if it went 7 innings and got rained out. Lenin Sosa, Miguel Vargas hit a home run. It just seems to be one of those things that if they can get the long ball going, they are going to have some success. And that actually plays well to right field. Right field is a ballpark where the ball can jump, depending on what the wind is doing mostly, but it will jump. So that's why you want to be a power team for the White Sox. And if they can get it out, hey, they've got a chance to win. I'm not saying they will win. I'm just saying in their wins, they've usually hit a home run, and that's what their path to success is.
So you'd say that would be the good for the White Sox.
That would be the good because they're terrible with runners in scoring position. They're dead last in terms of, I believe, average and OPS. They were 1 for 10 yesterday. I just feel like it's been a running theme on my show when I'm doing it solo is they just cannot produce with runners in scoring position. So if they can get that instant offense, that's going to help them obviously have some success.
Sure. I'd say the good for the Brewers, starting pitching. I think the starting pitching is underrated. It's one of the best starting staffs, ERA, pound per pound with anybody in Major League Baseball. The starting rotation has been very good. Quintana has been a great pickup. You guys, I won't see him in this series, but he's been really, really good. And I think anybody the Brewers have thrown out there, and they've gone with 8 or 9 starters so far, it's been really good. Now the bad, well, sometimes they can't get out of their way offensively. There's a few guys in this team where their averages are climbing, not there just yet. Yelich is sitting around 245. Contreras continues to get better. But there's a few guys on this team, and they're going through an injury with Garrett Mitchell now. We'll see how long he's going to be out with the oblique. So center field, Tuesday night, Churio played in center field on Saturday and Sunday. We'll see what happens in this White Sox series. Had not played on the Major League level, but he's coming off a big series against Colorado, big series in this last series at St. Louis. So hopefully Churio can get it going. He had been struggling right before that. So the bad is, sometimes with runners in scoring position, got the same problem here. But looking forward to the series. Game 1, you got 2 night games and then a day game on Thursday. And I wonder if we'll see a lot going down there. There's no retractable roof. Is there thoughts with the new Comiskey, another new Comiskey, that they're going to maybe build a retractable roof on the new one?
No, nobody seems to have learned what you should be doing in Wisconsin, and that is have a roof, because then you're guaranteed to have 81 games. But I think it comes down to costs is what it is. I mean, they're talking about a $1.9 billion stadium on a vacant land known as the 78, and Jerry Reinsdorf wants taxpayers to pick up $1.7 billion. So you got to cut costs where you can, I guess.
Anything north of Nashville needs a roof.
I agree, and I don't get why Major League Baseball doesn't even chip in, because part of it is you're protecting to make sure that game does happen. I mean, how many times have games had to be? I mean, again, the White Sox had to play the Twins in basically torrential, rain. It just was steady rain because they were trying to get that game in. I don't know why, because the White Sox come back in August, but they had to try to get that in because it was the series finale. You can't make the double headers. I mean, you would think, you're right, anything north of Nashville, you would have a roof to make sure that you can at least get your games in. Yeah,
without question. All right, when we come back, we'll talk about this being an old rivalry between these two from the American League days. We'll continue on with that. Out of this timeout, Chuck Freimund, Todd Welter here on this Locked On crossover. FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. The NBA playoffs are up and going. FanDuel giving new customers an incredible way to get in all the action. Right now, when you join FanDuel, You place your first $5 bet, you'll get $250 in bonus bets if your bet wins. I love how FanDuel makes the live betting so easy. Whether it's picking my favorite team or diving into the player props, the live betting, you go right to the live betting. Let's say in these NBA playoffs, say the Celtics and Orlando. You like the Celtics, they get down early in their game against Orlando. Well, the odds are obviously pretty good for Boston if you think they're going to make a comeback. You can do all that in FanDuel. FanDuel gives you just an amazing way to do live betting. Plus, again, you can do live props as well. Same game parlay, a big chance to win. Don't miss out. All the sports are right there. Head to FanDuel.com. Claim your $250 bonus when that first $5 bet wins. You win the $5 bet, they'll put $250 right into your account as a bonus bet. NBA playoffs, Stanley Cup playoffs, Major League Baseball, it's all there ready for you. And take advantage of the $250 in bonus bets right now. Go to FanDuel.com, FanDuel.com, America's #1 sports book. All right, down the stretch we come here on this Locked On crossover. What is you're a little younger than me. What is your first recollection of the White Sox Brewers rivalry back in the day?
Well, I remember when it's really was at its height and its most visceral was in the 90s when you had Terry Bevington and Phil Garner going at it. I do vividly remember that. I do remember, I think I was 6 or 7 coming up to county. The first time I ever went to a county stadium game was White Sox Brewers. So, I'm familiar with it. I remember it being somewhat cordial. And then, yes, I remember the bench curling brawl between it was Ozzie Guillen and I forgot who else. I remember that. And then I just remember we all realized, wow, we all hate the Cubs. And then, we realized we don't need to be angry anymore at each other.
No, there's no bitterness between the two franchises anymore. But I remember in the 70s on a Saturday night or a hot Sunday afternoon, man, there were brawls between White Sox and Brewers fans. It's hard to believe. I mean, there were always brawls on a Saturday night. They would extra staff that thing with security and police. And it would be all out brawl, no matter how much they charged for the beer back in the 70s. And a 75-cent beer was a lot. I remember my dad taking me down, sitting in the lower grandstand, and those fights would just erupt. One fan would call another fan a name or taunt the team, and it would be game on in that section. Unbelievable.
Yeah. Well, I think it's also that just Chicago, Wisconsin dynamic. I mean, I remember my old man taking me to old Soldier Field before a renovation, Packers, Bears, and there was always a fight, at least 3 or 4 fights breaking out constantly, just because, again, it's just that you get those two area dynamics that, one thing, the big city versus the Wisconsin, cheeseheads, all that type of stuff. And that usually tends to, get some fisticuffs there. And the White Sox and the Brewers had some pretty fun, interesting competition back in the 90s. But then the funny thing is I've always been a fan of the Brewers even before I worked for them and all that was, they gave us Jose Valentin in 2000 and Cal Eldred for, Jamie Navarro. That was a trade that will always be one of my favorite trades of all time. And then, the White Sox got Scott Podsednik 2005 World Series. So, you can never really totally go at the Brewers. I've always said they're a great second team for any White Sox fan because, again, they share a lot of common in terms of hatred for the Cubs. They play they play a pretty decent style of baseball that I usually like to watch, and that ballpark is amazing. So that's the way I look at it.
Yeah. You hit it on the head. We all got that hatred for the Cubs, so that's our common bond. You're talking about the Bevington-Garner fight. There was also Hawk and Wimpy.
Yes.
And Pachorak and Ken Harrelson, who I think are great. I thought were great. I thought they were awesome in the booth. Remember, Phil Garner challenged those two to a fight, or one of the guys, right around the Bevington-Garner. So it even turned over to the broadcasters.
Yeah, I remember, because especially Hawk Harrelson, he was one of the guys that, sometimes you can be cliche. Sometimes you want to be like, come on, Hawk, unload on the organization. They can't be, that great. But he was very good in the 90s of at least twisting it to where it was entertaining. And especially how he would defend the White Sox honor like it was like his wife or something. And Tom Pachorak, his brother, I think, was a former Brewer. It's just... it was just always fun. Those late, that late 90s before the Brewers then went to the National League. I mean, that's the other reason why it died out was, it was the American League. You had that, even though they were in two separate divisions, you still had them playing each other regularly. And then obviously they switch over and you realize that, hey, the Brewers can actually challenge the Cubs for the division, because as long as you have competent ownership, the Cubs are always going to operate like they are a small market team.
Todd, before I let you go, what are you looking forward to in this series, this 3-game set?
I'm just looking forward to, again, I don't want the White Sox to be a get-right team for the Brewers. I know the Brewers could really use these 3 wins, get back in the race in the NL Central, start to stabilize things, especially after not playing well in St. Louis. But again, one part of the exercise that I want to see this season is can you just make sure you are not the get-right team? So that's the biggest thing I'm going to focus in on. And then Shane Smith, I think he pitches on tomorrow.
Right?
Yeah, Wednesday, as we're recording this. So yes, he pitches Wednesday. I'm definitely looking forward to him. Can he continue to grow into a dude? Because his stuff, once you see it, you are going to be like, my gosh, this guy has got the stuff. And I'm looking forward to him actually facing Tobias Myers, who was a former White Sox farmhand. An example of, you go to the Brewers, they can revive your career. So I'm looking forward to that matchup.
Yeah, Tobias needs to pitch better than he did his last out. He walked to too many guys. Of course, it was his first one of the year, started the year on the injured list as well. I'm just looking to take 2 or 3. Of course, I'd love to have a sweep of the White Sox, but I don't look at it that way. Even when they played Colorado a couple of weeks ago, I was like, yeah, just go in there and take 2 or 3. Same thing here. Just go in, take 2 or 3, come home Friday night at the 500 mark when they face the Cubs on Friday night. So good stuff, Todd. Appreciate it, man. Good catching up with you again, and looking forward to the series. And hopefully all Brewer fans, there's plenty of seats available for this game. It looks like I went to the Gametime app. There's plenty of seats up for this one.
Oh yeah. I mean, there's definitely going to be plenty of seats. Definitely want to go on down, check it out. I mean, the White Sox, I know they were doing a promotion where it was like, I think $100. You got basically a guaranteed seat to every game for April and May. So, I mean, that's kind of what they're enticing. But yeah, the product right now has not been great for fans who want to come out. So yeah, definitely, I would suggest anybody take the drive down 994, catch out the game. Also, Rate Field, Sox Park, whatever you want to call it. It's still one of the best foods in all of American sports. It's probably one of the best restaurants in Chicago. So go check out some food there too.
Very good. Todd Welter, Locked on White Sox. Chuck Freimund, Locked on Brewers. Great to have you along here on a Tuesday. Enjoy the series, everybody. We'll talk to you tomorrow.